Why is my charcoal grill not getting hot enough? This is probably the most popular question I get from new charcoal grill owners, and it's a very simple fix. In this video, I'm going to go over the two most common mistakes people make, and I'm going to give you a complete guide to lighting your charcoal grill and what you should look out for using the thermal imaging camera as a good visual reference. Because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that you guys are making the best barbecue you ever had. Let's dive in. Okay, so this is probably the most common issue that people have with kettle grills or charcoal grills in general. You may feel like the coals are just not lighting correctly, or the grill isn't really ripping hot. And honestly, it happens to everybody. It was one of the first things that I had to learn when I switched over to charcoal grills and kettle grills. So in this video, I'm gonna try to attempt to really give you guys the two biggest reasons this usually happens. And yes, charcoal does have a factor, but it's a very small factor. Lump charcoal, briquettes, and so forth are all different. But in general, when your coals are ripping hot, you should have a very hot grill. Okay, let's start off with the first factor, and it's the most overlooked thing when people switch over to charcoal grills. And that's actually, your charcoal is not fully lit. I know that sounds simple, but 9 times out of 10, that's usually the issue. I highly recommend that you invest in a chimney starter. A chimney starter is the best way to really get your charcoal lit and properly lit. And typically what you want to do is you want to leave your chimney starter just doing its thing for at least 20 minutes. Now, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, depending on the weather. But I think 20 minutes is a good minimum reference point to use. Now, if you have a colder day, it might even be up to 30 minutes. But I would say let your chimney starter do its thing for at least 20 minutes and then take a look at it. But it's not just the chimney starter. You also want to use an igniter. There's many different creative ways to get your charcoal lit when you're in a pinch. And I know people will use newspaper and such, but having an igniter is the best way to ignite your charcoal using a chimney starter. I like to use the Weber cubes, but you can also use Royal Oak. Royal Oak has their own igniter. They're designed to create that flame, that heat, for that duration of time to get your charcoal lit. So what are some signs you should look for when you're using a chimney starter? Okay, you'll know when your chimney starter is done. You won't see any more smoke. The smoke will be almost non-existent. It will start off smoking a lot, and then that smoke will gradually decrease until you see nothing. Flames will be shooting off the top. You'll see a large flame shooting off the top of the chimney. And then finally, if you take a look at the coals, at the very top coals, you'll see them ashing over, and the coals underneath will be bright hot. That's a good indication that your charcoal is about ready. When you see that, go another 5 minutes. Until you learn how to use a chimney starter, until you learn how to properly light your charcoal grill, go that 20 minutes, take a look at it, see what it looks like, go another 5 minutes, and then dump out your charcoal. And I almost guarantee that your charcoal will be fully lit every single time. Now, of course, you can use stuff like a sear torch to get your charcoal lit, but a chimney starter is oftentimes the most effective, the easiest, and you just set it and forget it, come back after 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and you know your charcoal's lit. Another thing that I want to mention, and this is a good way to kind of quickly check if your charcoal is ready or not. If you've already dumped out your charcoal, let's say you're doing zone cooking, or if you have it, dumped out, spread out throughout the entire kettle grill, if you put your hand over your grill, and you don't have to get super close, this is plenty close enough right around here, and if you can keep your hand over the grill grates where the charcoal's at for more than, let's say, 4 or 5 seconds, your charcoal is not hot enough, it's not fully lit. Okay, so what do you do if you've prematurely dumped out your charcoal from the chimney starter or otherwise, and you've realized that your charcoal is not fully lit? Don't panic, it's okay. All you gotta do is leave the lid off of the grill for another 10 to 15 minutes or so, and the charcoal will get all of that oxygen that it needs to continue to light and ignite. And then within that 10 minutes or so, you should be fully lit. So if anything, you've just kind of delayed the process. Now, if you ignore that and you just start cooking, thinking, well, eventually the grill is gonna heat up and catch up with what I'm trying to do, you never wanna start cooking when you've not necessarily preheated the tool that you're using correctly. whether it's a pan, a grill, or so forth. You always want to preheat the object, the tool that you're going to use, in this case, the barbecue grill. If you don't do that, you're not going to get the results that you want. You won't get a good sear and so forth. So you're always fighting with yourself. So we're still on the first subject. I haven't actually moved on to the second subject yet, the second reason why your charcoal grill isn't getting hot enough. But another common question that I get that's related to, hey, my charcoal grill isn't getting hot enough, is when I cook marinated foods, it seems to extinguish the charcoal grill or the charcoal. And that's actually not true. If your coals are hot, they're hot. If you don't believe me, use a chimney starter, wait about 25 minutes, dump them out, get a spray bottle and spray the coals. You'll see that, yeah, sure, it does affect it a bit, but overall, that water is gonna evaporate, disintegrate, and your coals will still be ripping hot if you put your hands over them. Now, if you're using marinated foods, use common sense. Don't just throw on the marinated food or throw a cup or two of marinade on top of the charcoal grill, getting your coals soaked and wet. Yeah, that's gonna have an effect, right? I mean, if you dump a gallon of water on charcoal, try to dry off the marinated food a bit, or shake it dry, or even pat it dry. If you're trying to sear it, you wanna do that anyways. Moisture and water is your enemy if you're searing. If you're not trying to sear, just make sure you shake off that extra bit of marinade before you put it on the grill. Let's jump to the second issue, or the second reason why your charcoal grill isn't getting fully lit. It's another very simple, common sense thing if you think about it, but it's not using enough charcoal. Again, it doesn't matter if you're using briquettes or lump or whatever. You have to figure out how much charcoal you actually need. General rule of thumb, if you use a chimney starter, if you use the full chimney starter, that's gonna be more than enough to get your grill ripping hot. But if you're cooking something very quickly, you might wanna use half of that. If you're cooking a lot of items, you might wanna put some unlit charcoal in the grill and then pour the chimney lit charcoal on top of that to kind of layer everything and give you that duration. It's something that you're gonna have to learn through trial and error, but generally speaking, the second reason why your grill is not getting hot enough, you just simply don't have enough charcoal in the grill. This is very common when you're not using zone cooking, when you're not using the baskets. Like today, we're using zone cooking to cook the ribeye, right? I'm gonna be using indirect heat to cook the internal temperatures up, and then I'll sear it on top of the charcoal to get that perfect crust. If you're not using the charcoal baskets, what people typically do is they dump the charcoal on the grates themselves and then spread them around. People tend to kind of make this common mistake of thinking, well, as long as I have coverage, then I'm good. I have that even heat, and that's not true. Having one piece of charcoal in the corner of your grill isn't going to provide the same amount of heat if you have several charcoal layered on top of the other side, right? So you're gonna have uneven heat distribution, or if you just have a single charcoal representing every little square, inch of the grill, that's not enough to generate enough heat. Every piece of coal doesn't like to be alone. It likes to be with its friends. It likes to be in a group. So you want to think of charcoal as it needs to be kind of layered. Now you don't need to go crazy, right? But the snake method is a good example of why charcoal works best when it's around other charcoal. It's gonna generate that heat. It's gonna work together to give you the total amount of heat throughput that you're actually looking for. But generally speaking, you want to have a layer. If you're in the charcoal baskets or all that, you don't have to worry about it because they're already layered up and stacked amongst each other. But you need them to be layered so they generate that heat, so they keep heating each other, keep each other ignited. If you have a lone piece of charcoal out somewhere, that's not going to generate enough heat. And likewise, don't be stingy with the charcoal. And generally speaking, if you fill up a full-size chimney starter, which is designed for a 22-inch kettle grill, then that should be more than enough. You'll have plenty of charcoal, you'll have plenty of heat, and you will feel it. Likewise, if you have a larger kettle grill, like the 26-inch kettle grill or the Kamado or whatever, or even a different brand, a different charcoal grill, scale up. You might need a chimney and a half or a chimney and a quarter. And again, depending on the type of charcoal that you use, whether it's briquettes or lump or whatever, you should get at least an hour of really good cooking time out of your grill. If not more than that. If you're doing low and slow, the Kamados can go for 12, 16 hours, 18 hours. This kettle grill can easily get 6 hours of low and slow cooking. If I'm using the Master Touch Premium, which has a diffuser plate, maybe even 8 hours out of briquettes. So make sure you have enough charcoal. Okay, so now let's take a look at my thermal imaging camera. And I love using a thermal imaging camera because it visually shows you exactly what's going on. Now, open flames and the charcoal itself gets way hotter than what the camera can actually measure. I think the camera's limit is 700 degrees Fahrenheit. And trust me, charcoal will get a lot hotter than that. An open flame is obviously north of 1,000. So we're not exactly looking for the exact measurement. What I'm trying to show you is the difference, right? The difference in temperature, how the kettle grill heats up, how the charcoal heats up, and what does fully lit charcoal look like, and the stages in between. So if you take a look at the thermal imaging camera, when we're using the chimney starter, you can see that in the beginning, there's a lot of heat being generated from the igniter, but the charcoal is cold. The very top of the charcoal has some heat that's being generated from, again, the igniter that's going up, that's rising, heat rises, right? But it's nowhere near as hot as the bottom. And you can also see that the kettle grill itself is pretty much cold. That heat source, the igniter, is still providing that heat, but everywhere else, there's literally no heat, there's nothing. And if you look at the dead charcoal that I had from a previous cook that I know is dead, it's, I extinguished it a long time ago, a week ago, it's not generating any heat at all. Now it's measuring some heat, but that's the ambient heat coming from the igniter. And then as time goes on, if you look at the chimney starter, as the igniter is igniting more of the charcoal, you can see that that heat from the bottom is growing. And now it's a domino effect. The charcoal is lighting each other up, and it's going up and up and up. So the reason why a chimney starter works so well is because the coals at the very bottom, closest to the igniter, are fully lit. And as you get higher and higher up the chimney starter, the coals on top are not fully lit. So when you dump them, it's the opposite effect. The bottom, the charcoal that was fully lit, is now on top, and the top that wasn't fully lit is now on bottom. So you're gonna have a longer duration. It's gonna help extend your cook time. And that's why I love a chimney starter. So now let's talk about a common mistake that people make. They've waited 15 minutes, maybe they've waited 20 minutes, but they're getting impatient. And they look at the chimney starter, it's no longer guzzling out all this smoke. There might be a little bit of smoke, it's definitely reduced, and they might see a little bit of flames shooting out, and they think they're done. At this point, most people make the mistake of being impatient and dumping out the chimney starter. Your coals are not fully lit, unfortunately. If you look at the thermal imaging camera, yes, the coals are hot, but they're just simply not hot enough. So remember, if in doubt, be patient. You'll know. Eventually, when you do it correctly, you'll know what that feels like and you'll be able to replicate it. But right now, you have no idea what it feels like or looks like. So that's why I hope this video is going to give you guys some good guidance. And I hope that the thermal imaging camera is informative and gives you that visual indicator that you're looking for. Again, if you've made the mistake of dumping out your charcoal prematurely, put your hand over those grill grates. Your hand can't be there for more than like 2 or 3 seconds. So good things come to patient people, I promise. So that's basically it, guys. I really hope this video was informative. I had the same exact issue. When I first started off with charcoal grills, I couldn't get them hot enough. And I realized that I just didn't know how to properly light the coals. When I did invest in a chimney starter, all my problems went away. So I'm hoping this video was informative. I'm hoping that the thermal imaging camera really gave you guys that visual that you're looking for. And let me know in the comments below if it was helpful. How would you like me to use my thermal imaging camera next to help you with problems that you may be having inside the kitchen with your pots and pans or preheating or whatever, even the barbecue grill? And if you guys have a chance, please follow my other channel. This channel, Tom's Kitchen, is dedicated to cooking, and I have another channel called Tom Wade that is dedicated to filmmaking. It's all of the behind the scenes stuff. It's camera gear, tutorials, editing, and even some short films. So if you have a chance, please subscribe to that other channel. But until then, I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care, everybody.